In our timeline, the video game industry survived a devastating crash thanks in part to the Nintendo Entertainment System. But what if it didn't? What if the NES bombed so hard that it took the entire industry down with it? Using our state-of-the-art multiverse transmitter, Malrock Entertainment presents a review of the NES in a world where video games are obsolete and computer games reign supreme.
Alright, I know the schedule said we were looking at Scalebound today, but wouldn't you know it, the servers have been down for 3 days and I have no idea when they're coming back. So instead I want to talk to you about a different type of game. A type of game that has been long forgotten by the passage of time. Video games. In the late 1970s, video games were all the rage, with the leader of the pack being the video computer system from Atari. But by the early 80s, a series of bad business decisions left the video game industry on the brink of total collapse. However, a little-known company from Japan tried one last attempt to get into the market and salvage what was left of the industry. But ultimately, it became the final nail in the coffin. Allow me to introduce the entertainment system from Nintendo. Yeah, look at this thing. You're telling me this ugly, blocky piece of shit was supposed to save the video game industry? This thing couldn't save itself from total self-destruction. I mean it, this thing was notorious for massive hardware failure, and it all comes down to the way you actually insert the cartridges into the system. You're supposed to insert them from the front and then push them down, kind of like inserting a VHS tape, but over time, this wears down the connectors and leads to this. An annoying, blinking red light and the system turning on and off over and over again. So more times than not, you'll be stuck doing troubleshooting instead of actually playing the damn game. Seriously, I've seen Commodore 64s that were more functional than this thing. And while we're talking about them, what's with the bizarre shape of these cartridges anyway? It's like no other video game cartridge I've ever seen. Is it because the games are so advanced that they have to make the cartridges bigger to hold more chips or processors or whatever? Bullshit! Look at the Japanese version of this thing called the Family Computer. The cartridges are smaller, the system itself is smaller, and the cartridges plug into the system on the top. You know, like a normal video game system. And wouldn't you know it, it's the exact same system. Now, from what I understand, the reason they changed this thing so drastically when it came to the US was to trick consumers into thinking it was not just another video game system. Specifically, they were trying to make it look like a toy. But let's be honest, they could have made this thing look like a frickin' toaster and there was still little chance of fooling anyone. But could all the hardware failures and deceitful marketing be forgiven if the games themselves were at least halfway decent? Let's take an honest look. Alright, let's see. Where do I plug this thing in? No, not there. Not there either. You gotta be kidding me. I actually have to hook this thing up to a TV? Son of a bitch.
These games had better be worth all that trouble.
We begin with 10-Yard Fight. It's a football game and was actually developed by a company called Irem, whatever, who cares. Basically what you do is you just run the ball to the end zone just like an actual football game. At the beginning of the game, you control multiple players at once, and your teammates essentially act as a shield as you try to avoid the opposing team. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never seen a football game where you move as slow as a snail on weed. In fact, everyone in this game looks like they did a joint or 20 before they came onto the field. After you inevitably get tackled, it plays just like a traditional football game. You just pass the ball to your slow-ass teammate, get tackled, reset, and do it all again. Whether you play offense or defense, it doesn't matter. It's just the same shit over and over again. You can also select the skill level of the opposing team from high school all the way to Super Bowl. But all I can say is, what the hell kind of steroids are they giving these high schoolers? Because they're making Pat Tillman look like Rusty Lish. Seriously, where's the DEA when you need them? Next is Clue Land. You play as this pufferfish thing swimming around this board while grabbing onto these poles to go around in a circle. When you let go, you change direction. You also have to avoid these blue spiny things, which I think are supposed to be sea urchins. The way you defeat them is also really bizarre. You shoot these beams at them and then they turn into chocolate chip cookies, and then you slam them into a wall.
Damn! Nobody messes with a cute red pufferfish thing that sometimes has an arm that almost makes it look like a crab.
The objective is to make these gems appear in certain places. When you uncover them all, they make a picture. It could be a face, a spade, a heart, and... is that supposed to be a mouse? Why the hell is it sticking its tongue out at me? And I gotta say, this whole grab onto the poles to change direction thing is very disorienting, and it really takes a lot of time to get used to. It's especially frustrating when the controls actually change depending on which direction you're facing. And if you're not careful, you'll run into a sea urchin faster than you can say, "Great Barrier Reef!" And speaking of fast, the timer is unforgivingly, unfairly fast. By the time you finally get the hang of the complicated controls, it's too late. There are also these stupid pink things that bounce you in the opposite direction. You can be trying to slam a sea urchin into a wall, or be just within pixels of getting the next gem and boing! You're bounced back the other way. But the biggest problem that I have with this game, aside from its unforgiving learning curve, is that there's simply not much to it. The entertainment system was supposed to be a highly advanced video game system, but this was one of their first feet forward? Well, maybe there's some innovation down the line, so let's keep going. Now we've got Wrecking Crew. Several buildings have been scheduled for demolition, and rather than, send in a whole wrecking crew, like the title of the frickin' game, the construction company decides to send in just one worker with a giant mallet.
Kind of makes you wonder about the financial situation of this company if they're only able to afford one single worker.
Anyway, your job is to knock down all the structures in the building in order to collapse it in on itself. At first it's kind of fun to destroy stuff, but after a while it gets really repetitive, really boring, really fast. The only enemies you come across are these weird robots who want to stop you from demolishing the building for some reason. You can't touch them, or else you'll die and have to start all over again. The only chance you have of defending yourself is these green doors. You hit them and they open up, allowing the robots to blindly walk inside. There are also these bombs which knock off several structures in a row, but you better be careful when you hit them because if you hit them at the wrong time, they knock your ass down to the bottom where you get hit by the fucking robot. When you get to stage 3, that's when things get really fucked up. It starts you at the top and you have to work your way down. You can move to the opposite sides of each platform, but if you drop down at the wrong spot, you fall and might miss a structure. And once you hit the bottom, there is no way to climb back up again. Your only chance is to hit the robot on purpose and then start the stage all over again, which is fucking bullshit! But the main problem is, again, there is no reason for this game to be on the system. This looks like something that belongs in an arcade.
Well, at least you don't have to deal with some rich asshole hogging the game all day, but then again, is this really a game worth hogging?
Next is baseball. That's it, just baseball. Well, at least the title gets right to the point. You pitch, swing, run, catch. Yeah, it's baseball. I mean, it's not too bad, but there is one thing that's kind of distracting. When you hit the ball, there is a bit of a delay between you swinging the bat and actually hitting the ball. Half the time, it's hard to tell whether you even hit the ball or not. There's also this weird mechanic where you can actually stop swinging the bat halfway through. I guess it's supposed to be for making a bunt or something, but it's just so awkward. One thing I do kind of like is when the ball reaches the end of the field, it zooms out a little and gives the feeling of sitting in the stands. Also, the players themselves have some pretty decent animation, even when the game does zoom out. But at the end of the day, it's just baseball. Moving on. While we're on the subject of games with titles that get straight to the point, golf. You pick your club, line up your shots, set the power meter, swing, and that's pretty much it. One thing that's kind of weird is that it's shown from two different angles. The first is an overhead view, which makes sense since you have to actually see where the ball goes, but you also have this over-the-shoulder perspective where you can actually see the golfer. It's like they couldn't decide which angle to go with, so they just decided to do them both. The problem is, it becomes distracting when you're looking at two different angles at the same time, and it makes you go cross-eyed. Overall, though, this game is about as exciting as playing real golf. Speaking of exciting, our next game is Excitebike. It's a racing game where you race on some of the most unsafe courses in motocross history. I mean, look at some of these. There are ramps every couple of feet, some one after the other, and when you hit a ramp and go up in the air, you have to make sure you land the right way or you fall flat on your face, which slows you down. What this means is you have to move the control pad around like a madman to ensure that you land correctly. Otherwise, you and your bike fly off to the side of the track and you have to tap the button like crazy just to get back on your bike faster. Another thing that slows you down is that your piece of shit bike can actually overheat. In addition to a regular acceleration button, there's also a button that gives you an extra boost. But if you hold it down for too long, the bike overheats, then you have to pull over and wait for the temperature to go down before you can get back on the track, potentially costing you the win. There are two main modes, Selection A and Selection B. They are roughly the same, except with Selection B, you have to race against other people who will run into you every 5 seconds. Hey, watch it, asshole! There's also a mode where you can actually make your own tracks, although I doubt this game actually saves the tracks you make so you can share them with your friends, so what's even the point? Lastly, every time you boot up the game, the title screen music changes slightly. Weird. So, anyone for tennis? Well, that's what we're playing next, so deal with it. You throw the ball up in the air, bat it back and forth until someone scores, and you get the idea. It's tennis. To be honest, if there's one thing I can give most of these sports games, it's that it does almost feel like you're playing the real thing. Also, I kind of like this pseudo 3D effect when the ball goes way up in the air. Although one thing that's incredibly annoying is that the hit detection is incredibly hit and miss. Quite literally. And it doesn't help that the players move around like they just did a line of speed before the match. Damn it! Shit!
Son of a... Okay. Okay. We really gotta move on because I don't want to end up like John McEnroe.
Up next, Pinball. Well, it's just a pinball game, a very average one. Although one thing that's annoying is that every time the ball goes to the top of the screen, it flashes for a fraction of a second and then it goes to the top of the board. Would it have hurt them to tilt the board at an angle like an actual pinball machine? Constantly switching between both halves of the board is so disorienting. Not to mention, since this is all digital, no matter how hard you hit the button, you won't be able to hit the ball any harder. Speaking of the buttons, which of these buttons control the paddles? Well, you're only half right. The B and A buttons both control the right paddle, but for some reason, to control the left paddle, you have to use the control pad!
What kind of back-ass control is that?
And one other thing, there's no music. Instead, you get these noises. These loud, shrill, eardrum-piercing, Eustachian tube-rupturing noises! Overall, there is no way to become the pinball wizard with this game. You're better off just investing in a real pinball machine instead. Now we're going to play some soccer, whether we want to or not. You get a choice of 7 countries you can play as, and you can even pick how long each half lasts. Which is weird considering that when you actually start the match, the clock moves faster than a leap to daylight savings time. It seems that even the game wants to get itself over with as quickly as possible. Not that I blame it, because this is slow, tedious, boring, but somewhat playable, much like real soccer. Also, at halftime, you're treated to a little show from a group of cheerleaders.
Oh, come on, girls. Put some feeling into it. You'll never make the regional championships with that kind of choreography.
Up next, we got a really weird one. Ice Climber.
Now, I don't know about you, but when I think of ice climber, I think of someone climbing up the side of a mountain. You know, like Mount Everest. But you know what I don't think of? Some kid in a blue parka whacking on platforms made of blocks and jumping up the mountain. Not only that, you also have to whack birds in these little snowball yeti things. Okay.
But the one thing about this game that really gets my blood boiling is the jumping control. When you get ready to jump to the next platform, you have to make sure that you have enough clearance space or you won't make the jump. And there is no way to control your jump in midair. This is especially a problem when you get to the bonus stages, since the entire floor is made of solid ice. Get up there! Get up there! Damn it! Shit! Another thing that's really irritating is sometimes the little snowball bastards come by with ice and cover up the holes you've already made. Fuck you, you little furballs of shit! And once again, we run into the same damn problem. This is the type of game that belongs in an arcade, not a supposedly highly advanced video game system. Alright, let's try Kung Fu. Pretty straightforward. You walk from one end of the room to the other and beat the crap out of anyone and anything that gets in your way. You can do kicks, jump kicks, sweeping kicks, and punches too. Although since punches and kicks do more or less the same amount of damage, and the fact that the kick actually reaches farther, having the punch is kind of pointless. Oh wait, you actually get more points from punching.
Whoop-de-doo.
I do like that enemies come at you from opposing directions so the gameplay doesn't get too tedious. And you gotta love the digitized speech whenever you attack someone. There are also these douchebags who throw knives at you. You just jump or duck to dodge the knives, and you can beat these assholes senseless. Towards the end of the stage, you come across this dumbass who just whacks you on the head with a stick. You just gotta sweep kick him enough times while he's readying his attack, and BAM! Later on, you come across snakes that come out of falling vases, fire-breathing dragons, and these floating beehive things. But no matter, you just give him a taste of your fists and feet of fury!
Yeah! Yeah! Eat my feet, you slithering shit sticks! Ha ha! Okay, I'm having way too much fun with this game. We gotta move on. Now, these next few games require some accessories. Accessories that were a part of Nintendo's pathetic attempt to distinguish itself from the competition. First up, the Zapper. Yes, Nintendo actually made a gun. Although, if you lived in Japan, it really did look like a gun. Damn, the Japanese don't fuck around.
Now, the way this thing works is that it's supposed to detect a bright light source in order for it to interact with the game. When you pull the trigger, the screen goes black for a fraction of a second, and the targets you're supposed to hit become white squares. Now, the problem with that is that it's designed to work with certain TVs. Specifically, TVs with those big-ass cathode rays on the back. If you try to do it on modern HD TVs, it won't work. Fortunately, my TV is old enough to be considered an ancient relic, so we should be okay. Our first game for the Zapper is Duck Hunt. It starts off with your hunting dog sniffing around and he leaps behind the bushes. Then, ducks start flying around and you just shoot them down. When you shoot them, the dog pops up and holds him in his front paws as if this was a Looney Tunes cartoon. But when you miss and the duck flies away, the dog pops up and starts laughing at you.
Yeesh. What a bitch. Literally.
There's also a clay shooting mode, which I guess was made to appease the animal rights people.
But then again, those are the same kind of people who pitch a fit every time someone trips over a cockroach, so what the hell do I know?
Up next, Wild Gunman. This one's actually kind of cool. You play as a cowboy in the Old West having duels with a multitude of dangerous hombres. Or rather the same 5 types of hombres over and over again. The object is to pull out the Zapper and shoot your opponent before he can shoot you. There are 2 timers on the upper right corner. The bottom one, you have to be as fast or faster on the draw in order to win. One thing that's kind of funny is the different animations when you hit your opponent. A couple fall on their asses, another's hat flies off. Okay, typical stuff. But then there's this poor sap whose pants actually fall to his ankles.
Okay, how the hell can you pant someone just by shooting them? Okay, you know what? I take it back. This is a Looney Tunes cartoon.
One other thing that's kind of creepy is that when your timer starts and your opponent draws his gun, the top half of his head disappears and turns into these creepy crosshair star things.
My God, what are we in Westworld? Okay, we gotta move on before this guy goes haywire and starts shooting up the joint.
Alright, Hogans Alley. For this one, all you have to do is shoot cardboard cutouts of gangsters while avoiding cardboard cutouts of innocent civilians and police officers. There are 3 modes. The first mode is at a typical shooting range, but for the second mode, you move onto a street, or as close to a street as you're going to get in this scenario.
You know, I think Nintendo missed a perfect opportunity to market this game to the FBI for training purposes. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but hey, if Atari can make a version of that tank game Battlezone for the military, then I guess anything's possible.
For the third mode, you have to shoot tin cans in order to get them to land on certain spots to score points. What this has to do with the rest of the game, I have no clue. Overall, even though all 3 of these games function roughly the same just with a different coat of paint, they were pretty innovative for the time. Just don't expect to play them as easily as you would have back in the day. But now we come to the entertainment system's true infamy. One of the big reasons why it failed, and a perfect example of why big flashy gimmicks don't always make great products. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the Robotic Operating Buddy, or Rob if you'd prefer. Along with the Zapper, this guy was meant to be Nintendo's gateway into the dying video game industry. Their Trojan horse, if you will. But unlike the Trojan horse, this thing crashed and burned before Nintendo could charge in for the attack. To demonstrate, here is one of only 2 games that work with Rob, Gyromite. Or Robot Gyro. Jeez, make up your mind, people. Now before we play the game, we have to get Rob set up. Yes, this stupid bucket of bolts requires assembly before you can even start the damn game. I mean, look at this shit. Tops, a motor, what the hell even is this? Oh, I get it. It's so Rob can actually interact with the controller. Anyway, on to the game. You're a professor trying to collect all these sticks of dynamite before they blow up, all while avoiding these wind-up dragon toys. Looks like a typical platforming game, except for the fact that you can't jump. And what's with these big-ass pillars blocking your path? Well, that's where Rob here comes into play. What you do is you press the start button on your controller and the screen turns blue. Then you press the corresponding button on the controller, which causes the screen to flash green. This somehow sends a signal to Rob to make him move. That may sound neat, but let me show you what you're supposed to do with Rob in this game. You're supposed to make Rob pick up one of these top things, bring it all the way over to the motor, drop it into the motor to get it to spin, take it out of the motor while it's spinning, bring it all the way back to the controller attachment, and then drop it onto the corresponding button on his controller to make the pillar move in the game. Are you starting to see the problem here? If not, let me explain it in the nicest possible terms. Rob is too fucking slow! Whenever you give him a command, he only moves maybe a few inches at a time, so you're constantly having to send signals every few seconds. Now keep in mind, you have to do this for every single command you do, and no, repeatedly sending the signal does not make Rob go any faster, because he only responds to one command at a time. This is especially a problem when there's a wind-up toy right on your tail and you can't defend yourself, or when time is almost up. What's even worse is if Rob moves the top at the wrong time, you'll end up getting flattened by the fucking pillar!
Jesus! Thank God they never thought to program blood during this time. Otherwise, we probably would have had congressional hearings from the Senate. Can you imagine that?
There's also this other mode where you basically just guide the professor as he sleepwalks through the course.
Jeez. Looks like he was either working late in the lab again, or his new medication has some pretty nasty side effects.
Although the professor's sleeping animation sums up this mode perfectly. It's slow, boring, and completely pointless. Overall, you're better off just getting an actual human being to play this game with you. Or better yet, play with your feet on the controller attachment. Because when you get down to it, this is just a standard arcade platformer with the control split between two controllers just so the slower than a tortoise on Valium Rust Bucket can feel important. And at last, we have Super Mario Brothers.
Oh, you mean like that arcade game Mario Brothers? You know, the one with the goofy-ass plumbers who are tasked with getting rid of crabs, turtles, and God knows what else by knocking them on their asses from below? Let's see what's so damn super about this version.
Okay, not exactly what I was expecting, but this does have some potential. You just move from one end of the screen to the other, much like Kung Fu. You stomp on enemies, including these turtles, and... the hell are those? And who's this yellow-bellied bastard hiding in a cloud throwing spiny turtles at me? Get down here and face me, you miserable, cowardly, wretched little caterpillar! You can get power-ups like this mushroom that turns you into a giant... what? There's also this flower that gives you a change of wardrobe and gives you the ability to shoot fireballs. And once in a blue moon, you'll find the star which makes you invincible so you can mow down everyone who dare stands in your way. There's also a great amount of variety in the level design. Sometimes you're underground, sometimes you're underwater, sometimes you're in the sky, and sometimes you're even in a castle.
And see, this is what I'm talking about. If Nintendo had actually done more games like this, the entertainment system would have been a huge hit. But of course, there are lots of things about this game that suck.
First off, the controls are incredibly sensitive. When you let go of the control pad, you actually gain momentum and you keep moving for a fraction of a second.
It's like this guy shined his shoes with Crisco before he went on this magical quest in wherever the hell this place is.
And when you jump, you can actually jump higher the longer you hold the button. This can be problematic when you're trying to jump from one platform to the other and it's at a great distance. If you don't make the jump just right, whoop, down you go! Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! And look at this shit. All I'm trying to do is jump up on this damn spring, but if you don't hit the button at the right time, it doesn't work. Get up there! Get up there! Get up there, damn it! Ugh, finally. Alright, so when you make it to the end of the castle level, you come across this big dragon guy who breathes fire at you.
Better lay off the Tabasco, big guy.
All you have to do is jump over him and touch this axe, which breaks the bridge he's on and sends him to the fiery pits of hell. So after all that, you come across this guy who has a mushroom on his head who tells you that... oh, you gotta be kidding me. Our princess is in another castle? Yeah, fuck that. I'm not doing all that shit again.
Overall, the entertainment system was such a flop, it died after only 6 months on the market, and it took the whole video game industry down with it. Yeah, now, I didn't pick these games. This is all of them. I just reviewed every entertainment system game that was released in North America. Yes, that's right. I'm holding the entire library of games for this piece of shit in this one little bin. Well, except for the other ROM games stacked up because it's rare, expensive, and it's probably just a stack of shit anyway. Now, in all fairness, most of the games were at least playable, but the problem was they're the exact same kind of games you could have found in the arcades at the time. Now, the whole point of the entertainment system was to get people into video games again and resurrect the dying industry. But with very few exceptions, Nintendo barely made any attempts to do anything new or innovative, or to get people to give a shit about this damn thing. Now, I'm sure that had it been a hit, the technology would have eventually improved and we would have gotten something truly revolutionary. But the fact is, nobody really gives a shit about video games anymore. And maybe that's for the best. Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta go take out the garbage.